Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The Silverchair Universe Presents Yewno Unearth. My name is Basha Jones, Customer Success Manager. I am filling in for Stephanie Lovegrove, who usually runs these webinars. We're excited to have you with us today to learn more about Yewno Unearth. We have with us from Yewno, Ruth Pickering, who will be taking us through their product. Before we get started, a few notes. Attendees have been muted, so if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please type them into the chat box and we can address those at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording will be sent to you after the talk. Finally, when the webinar has concluded, you'll get a brief survey. We really appreciate you taking a minute to complete the survey to help us improve the universe offerings as well as the webinar series. So with that, I'm going to turn over controls to Ruth. And Ruth, over to you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Sorry, Basha. The bigger thing is Stephanie. Apologies. Right, so hopefully everybody can see a black screen that says Yewno Unearth for Publishers. If at any point you're not seeing that, please do email in. So what I'd like to do today is first of all talk to you about an overview and show you a demonstration of the product, its use cases and some of the current features, and how the technology is different and getting started. So first of all, here's a screenshot of some different images from the product itself. So our patented technology reads the full text of any item of content from a publisher, and we're able to categorize it in a totally unbiased way, providing topics and subtopics, and not just the topic and the subtopic, but the exact percentage of each of those things. In addition to that, we can provide concepts from the full text. And a concept you can think of as something similar to a keyword, although it's much richer because it also carries with it a definition and a pertinence score. But a combination of these things enables any publisher to understand precisely what any item in your content portfolio is about, and it also can help you find anything you're interested in. So it can give you a view of an individual item of content, or it can give you an overview of a whole content set or specific parts of a content set that you want to understand. And using our technology, we keep all items of content up to date. So every day, if a new item of content is published, it can be updated within our system within 24 hours. So if you think about how items of content are typically categorized, they'll use 1 to 3 categorization codes, something like BISAC or thema, and they'll maybe use between 3 and 15 keywords. Because our technology reads the full text and surfaces all concepts, and I'll come on to some examples later, you'll find that you'll get a much, much richer, more granular list. So if we take an example of a journal, on average, we would find about 80 concepts for a journal article. So it's not just about concepts and topics and percentages. The other key things are that because the artificial intelligence technology reads the full text and it understands context and meaning, it can identify the relevant section of the text even if the concept itself or the group of words isn't mentioned. And I'm going to come on to a very specific examples to show that. Also, Yewno's technology isn't simply hunting for keywords or words from a predefined list. We've recreated a neural network model using our artificial intelligence, so we can identify new concepts even if they've never been written about before. And our data is very rich. So I'm showing you here a screenshot of our UI, but if you would prefer to take the data through an API because you already have existing platforms, you can do that. So moving on to a little bit of background about the technology and how it works, why it's unique and how it differs from historic or more traditional methods. First of all, because it's AI, there are no volume restrictions and it's completely unbiased. So you might think there are other products that can make those claims. So let's move on to what really distinguishes Yewno, other than its patent, is that the algorithms can turn any unstructured data into structured navigable representations that can facilitate discovery. So because we're not simply hunting for concepts or keywords from a list, our technology is recreating a neural network model, and it can understand meaning. And that's what differentiates us from some other technologies. So if I give you an example, when Brexit happened, our technology was reading a lot of data. So Brexit was a kind of phrase coined to talk about the UK exit from the European Union, but it wasn't a real word at that time. It wasn't something that you'd have found in a dictionary. But as we were reading the text, we read this and we understood that it was referring to the UK exit from the European Union. And so that became a concept, but it was linked to the UK exit to the European Union because it has the same meaning. So that's how things can be kept up to date rather than being dependent on a historic dictionary of some sort. Behind the scenes, all of the data is stored in an enormous multi-dimensional graph, and that's what you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. You don't need to visualize that in terms of how you use the product, but it's important to understand that component because keeping information up to date is fantastically important to anybody who owns content or who is trying to find relevant content. And because it's in a graph, which is a fantastically flexible mathematical instrument, all of the links can be updated on a daily basis or however often the content is updated, and new connections can be made across the portfolio of content to help publishers surface more relevant items. So moving on and looking back at how technology has evolved. So years ago, people would be using BISAC and keywords for completely different reasons that people categorize content today. So they would be used to make sure that a book was found on a physical shelf in a bookstore. And then as we've moved along, natural language processing came about, first of all, from about 1970 onwards, and it was a huge leap forward in terms of using the full text, but it was still hunting for keywords, and it was using statistical distribution to understand how relevant things were. And what we're doing is the generation after that. So it's using artificial intelligence and recreating a neural network model. And what happens is as we're reading the text and we identify an item, if we see something like Java, we can understand whether the text is talking about Java, the island, close to Indonesia, Java, the programming language, or Java, the coffee. And then that concept is extracted from the text and promoted into a multi-dimensional semantic vector space close to all of the other similar concepts, but in a very, very accurate way. So you'll never find Java, the coffee muddled up with a programming language. Then explaining how the technology can actually understand the content. If you look at the example shown about internment, if you read the text, you'll see very clearly that it is all about internment, but you won't see the word internment itself mentioned. So because the technology can actually understand content and its context, even if a specific word or group of words that describes a concept isn't mentioned, we can understand that the text is in fact all about that concept, and we can actually take the user to the relevant part of the text they're interested in, and we can help a publisher surface that text in order to create a relevant connection and to market it appropriately. So looking at Yewno Unearth, the product we're talking about today, and how it can be useful to publishers. It has multiple use cases, and I'll come back to each of these individually afterwards. But what we see is because of the increased granularity of the full text reading, you can use the much greater number of concepts to help people find information on your website better. And also, when you send your content to external discovery sites, if you improve the quality of the feed and the quality of the granularity, your content will surface better in other environments. Another great example is sales. It's very difficult for any individual salesperson to really understand every single item of content in a portfolio and therefore to answer customer queries. But if you have an environment where every single item of content has been read and you can put in queries and create lists, it's fantastically useful for salespeople to be able to answer customer queries, whether that's at a sales conference or whether that's in a traditional sales meeting environment. From a marketing perspective, your ability to understand your content really is the key to success in terms of helping people understand what's there, creating new collections, and exposing things that might have been overlooked. It can also be helpful to editorial and strategy teams in terms of making decisions based on an accurate understanding of what's there and evolving the portfolio of content strategically in the direction that the company wants to go. So what I'd like to do now is move on to a demo, and I'm just going to move here into a different screen. So hopefully everybody can see a screen that shows a kind of gray background with a search bar. So this is a demo of actually how the product works. And what you can see here on the left-hand side is I'm showing you a drop-down which has all title, topic, ISBN, author, or concept. So you can search in many different ways across your portfolio of content. And in this case, I'm going to start off with a title search. And I'm interested in cannabinoids because I've read about that recently, so I'm putting that into my search. So as you enter something into the search bar, it will retrieve the results. So what you can see here is this is a book. It was published in 2017. Here's the title, the author, there's the ISBN, and you can link back to the publisher if you would like. Then it's giving me the topics. So it's telling me that this particular item is 86% about medicine. And if I want to click on the drop down, it's mostly about pharmacology as a subtopic, and it's 14% about psychology. Here I can then see this abstract that was provided to us by the publisher. And then on the left-hand side, I can see the concepts. So if I start scrolling down this list, you'll get a sense of how much richer and longer and deeper and more granular the concept extraction is using AI technology. So I could be going on for quite a long time here in terms of all of the concepts that have been extracted for this book. But if I take a few examples, so if we look at adjuvant therapy, what you can do is click on that item, and it will take us to the exact point in the item of content where that was found. Sorry, my thing has just crashed on me, but I'm coming back. I think I might have lost my Wi-Fi connection here, but can people see everything?
Yes, I can still see your screen.
Great, because on my side it's not loading, so I think I might have lost a bit of my connection here. Let me try again. I'm going to go back to PowerPoint because it's not loading for me now. So hopefully that gave a little bit of an understanding of some of the granularity that you can get, and right down to the kind of topics, the percentages, the concepts, etc. And then looking at how this can be useful to publishers. So in terms of making your content discoverable on external websites, the more depth you have around an item of content. So in this case, we're looking at this item of content and we're able to categorize it as 100% about physics, 74% about astrophysics, and 18% about nuclear physics. And then you can look beneath that and you can start to see this long list of concepts from galaxy rotation curve, neutralino, axion, all the way through to mass energy equivalence. And so somebody who's looking is possibly not looking for something about physics. They might be looking at the level of angular resolution or weak gravitational lensing. So having this increased or enhanced granularity around each item of content makes that content discoverable on an external website, in a university search environment. So people will be able to find items of content in your portfolio that were previously hidden to them. Here's another example of a university search tool, and it's showing how for this particular book, you can add this huge amount of granularity where previously there was actually no information provided. So the way in which somebody would be searching for the content would only be surfacing results at a very, very high level rather than based on the full text of that item of content. Now, I've shown you several screenshots and a brief demo of the interface, but it may be that in your company you already have quite a lot of platforms and you don't actually want a new interface, but you want to benefit from the full text understanding of your content and to take that information into an existing interface. In that case, you can always use an API. So our concept metadata API gives a huge amount of granularity, and what you can see on this screen is that for any item of content, you're given the concept. So if we look on the top right-hand side, you can see the concept here is particle accelerator. And then you can see a score. So here we're seeing the score of 0.9. And as you move down the list, you can see the next concept, electron volt, 0.904. And this is incredibly useful information. So if you have a portfolio of content Maybe that concept particle accelerator might appear across multiple items, but you're able to surface them and rank them according to the pertinence scores. So you can get this incredibly rich information about topics, subtopics, their percentages. You can get concepts, all of their pertinence scores. You can also get definitions, all through an API. So you can use that information in your existing platforms and help people surface parts of your content portfolio. You can also use it to help sales and marketing answer customer queries and create relevant packages. So you can create a specifically customized reading list, which is a really nice feature. And it's not only about creating lists, but it's also about keeping those things updated. So if you, for example, create a reading list according to certain parameters, certain topics, certain concepts, each day or each week as new content from your portfolio is updated, if a new item is relevant to the collection, you'll receive an email that says, would you like to add this item of content into your portfolio? I mentioned before an example of a salesperson at a conference who can quickly answer a customer query and respond with an accurate list which they can download or send to the customer. And also, if somebody wants to create a list for promotion, it's something that you can now do very, very quickly. And you can also go down to the level of creating particular bespoke lists for courses. And the key thing really is that everything you create will also be kept up to date. In terms of creating relevant bundles, you might also be interested in similarity rankings. So again, because our technology has read the full text, we can create these incredible similarity rankings. And so you might say, well, if people are interested in this item of text, I'd like to also suggest to them other interesting things that are highly correlated. And you can decide how many of these items you would want to show to a customer or a potential user. So you can deploy it internally, or you can also deploy it on an end user site. And finally, document examiner. So you might be interested in understanding how any new item of content that someone's suggesting that you purchase or you add into your portfolio compares with an existing item of content. So this document examiner allows you to analyze on an individual item basis, or you could do it on a bulk basis, items of content and compare them to your existing portfolio. So it can be a fantastic tool for a number of different things. First of all, you could be evaluating preprints or manuscripts before you decide whether or not to accept them. You could use it to point them to the appropriate reviewer team or reviewer. It can also help make strategic decisions on whether or not you accept or reject new content, and that can help you direct your portfolio strategically in the right direction. It's also incredibly helpful to see visually how often an item overlaps with existing content versus offering new content, new topics, new subtopics, and new concepts into your portfolio. One of the critical things, of course, is keeping content updated. You don't want to create a series of lists that are immediately out of date. So from our perspective, once we've set you up on our platform, we will update the content as often as you send us an update, and it will be live within 24 hours of being provided to us. So your platform is always completely up to date, and whenever you are sending feeds out externally, when you're creating packages for customers, when you're using the information, it will always be constantly up to date. So you don't have to worry about going back and updating things, because we will keep the information up to date and all of the lists and other items will be constantly updated. So how can you get set up? So from our point of view, it's a very streamlined and straightforward process. Content is deposited normally on our FTP. It can be updated daily or as often as provided. Often journals are updated daily and often books are updated less often. You can also update more than once a day if that is convenient for you. After the initial setup phase, when we will work through some details about your metadata formats in order to store your information correctly, new content can be live in the platform within 24 hours. And you can select a range of different options. If you're interested in a UI, there is a UI option. And if not, you can take the API feed, which is exactly the same data, but you can feed it into your existing platforms. So in summary, there are a wide range of interface options if you're interested in understanding your content in this level of granularity and accuracy. You can use the UI that we provide, you can use an API, and we also have sometimes people who want the information to download into a CSV. In terms of the various product features, first of all, we have semantic metadata. So you have the topics, subtopics, their percentages, the concepts, their pertinence scores and their definitions. And you can also link to the exact section of a document and provide a snippet of information if you want to do a look inside experience. And you can also get chapter level detail if you have books. There's also similarity capability. So once you've identified a document, you can find other similar documents across your portfolio. You can use the UI to create collections, and you can keep those collections up to date. And in addition to the automatic element, the AI element about selecting by topic, subtopic, or concept, you can add a little bit of manual curation if you want to tweak the collections after you've built them. The document examiner feature lets you look at individual items and decide whether or not you do want to include them in your portfolio in the future, or to compare against items in your existing portfolio. And the semantic profile kiosk can also enable you to profile an individual if you should choose to do an individual profile rather than a profile of a document. Yewno is a relatively new company. We were founded in 2015, but we've had quite a lot of success in the industry around our technology, around some of it's around innovation, and some of it's around the solutions. And that's just a snapshot of some of our awards. But now I'm very happy to hand over to any questions that have either been emailed in or that people would like to ask.
Okay, so if you have any questions, please go ahead and add them into the chat. I have one question, Ruth, which is, you were listing out, there's really so many different ways that Yewno can be used. Is the cost structure for clients the same regardless of which particular products that they might choose to use, or is there sort of a ability to pick one over another depending on how they want to use the product?
That's a great question. Thanks very much. So yes, you don't have to pay for everything. You can decide, I would like the UI, I would like all my journals, all my books, I would like a certain element of my content set, or you could say, actually, I just want the API. So you can select whichever element is pertinent for you. And it might be that, a certain department wants a certain set of features and they will agree to pay for one component and a different department wants another thing. So it also means that within a publisher organization, as different people have different use cases, you can kind of subdivide the way in which you allocate the costs.
Great. And we have one question that's come in, which is to speak in a little bit more specificity around what Silverchair's platform integration consists of.
Yep.
Ruth, are you able to speak to that?
Yes. So from our perspective, we have a relationship with Silverchair. So your content is all stored on the Silverchair platform. And from our point of view, we already have the interface with Silverchair set up. They've already tested all of our APIs. So if you want to move ahead, it's a completely seamless thing. You don't have to do anything other than confirm to Silverchair and sign a contract. You actually physically don't need to do anything because they've done all of the platform setup and all of the testing already.
Great, thanks, Ruth. Yeah, so if you are interested in moving forward, please feel free to reach out to Ruth directly or myself or your product delivery manager, and we'll be happy to get the conversation going. As there are no more questions at this time, I will just close to say thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to follow up, please feel free to reach out to Ruth or myself or your product delivery manager. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you on a future Silverchair Universe webinar.